With Disney's ambitious $2.5 billion expansion of the Disneyland Resort on the horizon, many are curious, myself included, when will we know this project has officially begun? In 2017, Disney would start construction on the Pixar Palace parking garage, because in 2019, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge would be opening up for guests. So in this particular example, we see Disney building a new parking garage just to keep up with what they believe the demand would be for an entirely new land. The biggest expansion in the history of Disneyland. But what this illustrates is that Disney's parking expansions are always related to theme park expansions. Disney makes the move in the parking space to adjust what they're doing inside of the theme park space. So just like Pixar Palace parking garage supported the expansion of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, could we see the future of Disneyland Forward attached to another major parking project? Because today we're breaking down how parking and expansion go hand in hand at the Disneyland Resort. But friends, before Disneyland Forward can begin, there is a bunch of infrastructure projects that have to first kick off. So as we do on this channel, if we want to predict the future, the best way to do that is by studying the past. And today we're going to look at previous construction projects, the reasons why they showed up at the Disneyland Resort, and how long these projects took to complete. Looking at these projects will help us better predict the future of the Disneyland Resort and the future of Disneyland Forward. And Mickey and Friends was built so that DCA could show up, because DCA took over the old Disneyland parking lot. Our first case study shows us a direct correlation to removing parking, building a garage, building new entertainment. And Mickey and Friends would signal a new massive chapter in the story of Disneyland, where it would become a multi-day park, a multi-day experience, and really transitioning away from the idea of being a theme park, but to being a full-fledged resort. And it all started with Mickey and Friends. The Mickey and Friends parking structure took a little over 2 years for Disney to complete. And at time of completion, this was the biggest parking garage in the world. Then Mickey and Friends would get a neighbor when the Pixar Pals would show up and open in 2019. And in just a little over a year's time, the Pixar Pals parking garage that's directly behind me was built. So there would be enough parking to handle what Disney thought was going to happen with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, adding over 5,000 parking spaces to the Disneyland Resort and giving them enough capacity to handle the big audiences that they were anticipating showing up. And both of these parking structures represent the relationship between the city of Anaheim and Disneyland. And knowing that Disneyland Forward has been voted for approval means that we could anticipate something like one of these structures, or a mega structure as big as both of them, showing up in the near future, as Disneyland Forward represents the city of Anaheim's biggest chance of growth over the next decades. So looking at the timelines of both Pixar Pals and Mickey and Friends, and tying them together to what major expansions in the park that created each of these parking garages, should give us a little indication of what to anticipate next. Now, because we've looked into Disneyland's past and drawn a straight line from new parking structures to new theme park developments, now let's pivot over to figure out what has to happen to get Disneyland Forward started. So to get the clear picture of when we could anticipate when Disneyland Forward is going to begin, well, the math will show us that all of that lies on the plot of land directly behind Tomorrowland. This will be the indication that Disneyland Forward has officially began once we see movement on the eastern side of the Disneyland Resort. Now, many of you that have been tracking the progress of Disneyland's growth are going to shut this idea down because, as we all know, they tried to build something over on the eastern side of the park once before, and it got shut down because residents weren't happy that they felt like Disney was icing out local businesses. However, that just isn't the case anymore. A huge part of Disneyland Forward was Disney doing tons of research, tons of studies, proving not only to the citizens of Anaheim, but to the elected officials of Anaheim that they could build something over on the eastern side of the resort that would be beneficial not only to the corporation, but to the community. So a big part of Disneyland Forward was making sure that all of the hurdles and obstacles that squashed this in the past would be resolved, giving Disney the ability to build the crucial part of Disneyland Forward. Gotta have a spot for those cars. So realistically, the start date for Disneyland Forward is when we see dirt start moving on the east side of Harbor and the Eastern Gateway parking structure is beginning to get built. I don't anticipate any movement until this begins. And when completed, this parking garage will have more parking spaces than Mickey and Friends and Pixar Pals combined. That's over 15,000 parking spaces, which is enough to support not only Disneyland Forward and the expansion of Disneyland and DCA, but also, this is the important part and the exciting part, a brand new theme park, as well as removing the buses and drop-off point from the Esplanade, because all of that will live below the parking garage because the Toy Story parking lot will no longer exist. So you'll either park on the east or the west, and then the decision of where you go is up to you from there. Hey friends, I hope you're enjoying today's video where we're looking at the past of Disneyland so we can better predict its future. If you're having a great time, how about you predict your future by following along with Hey Bricky and subscribing to the channel. It is the easiest, freest way to make sure that I keep showing up with 3 videos every week to help you look into the past of Disneyland so we can better predict where it's going in the future. Thank you so much for signing up to Hey Bricky. I appreciate you showing up today, and I hope you're having fun with today's video. Now back to what we're breaking down. When's a shovel going in the ground? So not only does progress start on the eastern side of the Disneyland Resort, but that's also where any delays might begin as they're trying to dial in and get the plans in the city on board for what's going to be built over there, because this parking garage is going to be massive. So what we know about Disneyland Forward right now is pretty limited, but there is one thing that Josh D'Amaro said at D23 2024 in the Horizons theme park announcements. There's one thing that he said, and he went out of his way to say it. The construction on Coco would begin in 2026. And this made me wonder, did we just suddenly hear a much bigger announcement than a project start date? Could this date indicate something much, much more than just Coco showing up at the Disneyland Resort? And the announcement of when they're going to begin construction on the Coco-themed family boat ride is significant because it's the one date that gives us a clear indication on what Disney is planning on doing with the future of the timeline of the Disneyland Resort, and specifically DCA. I'm anticipating that the Coco family boat ride will have lots of Disney's top-notch technologies, and it will push family boat ride experience further than what we've seen in the past. I can't imagine they would put a cheap clone in when it's landing at DCA at such a pivotal time. The park is running out of space, and everything that gets put in needs to be precious. And I think they've chosen an appropriate property to really go all out and flex what a family boat ride can be in the 2020s. Historically, when Disney opens new attractions, they use this as a moment to display new innovations in technology integrated into one fan experience. Like when we saw Rise of the Resistance show up in 2019 at Disneyland, it showed lots of different ride techniques all stitched together in the first time ever. Therefore, Disneyland Forward projects will be using up some of Disney's most precious land. They know they have to deliver with some of their most ambitious projects for the long-term growth of the Disneyland Resort. And most Disney fans, such as myself, anticipate that Disneyland Forward will bring more of these type of innovative attractions. Now, when we look at more global trends with Disney parks, and we see the most immersive and interactive attractions popping up, they all have one major component in common. The type of attractions that seem to be pushing the boundaries of what Disney's capable of and guest expectations are the type of attractions that all seem to pop up when Disney converts raw space to theme park space, which what gets me excited about potential parking garages coming is what that means when the space behind me is no longer parking space, but theme park space, belonging to Disneyland. Potentially the home of something that might resemble a Fantasy Springs domestically. That could happen right behind us at some point and be a huge compliment to the Disneyland Hotel, staying in the Fantasy Tower and having a view into the magic and into the fantasy. But if you notice what's there right now, it's cars. Gotta find a home for those cars before the future can show up. Because all of the promises of the future are directly tethered into the infrastructure to find appropriate parking for Disney guests. Doubling the size of parking with a parking garage over on the eastern side that is big as both of the parks behind me combined, that gets us into a spot where everywhere where you see a car is currently in play to become part of the theme park experience. And that also includes the Toy Story parking lot. In the history of the growth patterns of the Disneyland Resort, there's one trend that is quite obvious. And this trend I would anticipate would be a part of the Disneyland Forward projects. And if history does indeed repeat itself, once this begins, we'll have a much clearer idea when Disneyland is moving forward with Disneyland Forward. This will be the test to know what's happening next and give us a great idea where we might anticipate future projects. Because the map is going to open up once this space does. What could the future expansion of DCA have to do with Disneyland Forward? Well, there's something that jumps out at me right away. Because if DCA is scheduled to get not only the Coco themed family boat ride, but also a truly ambitious Avatar project that looks like it's going to be based off of the ride technology that we saw at Shanghai Disneyland with that truly amazing Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. Here's my question for you. Do both of these attractions fit inside the current footprint of DCA? Because I believe that one does, but it's debatable if both do. So for me, the big question is this. Will these attractions go inside of DCA, or will they be an indication that Disneyland Forward is happening where they can go over into the Simba parking lot and create a much larger entertainment experience for the DCA guests? Are we looking at possibly some of the first Disneyland Forward projects, but Disney's just not labeling them that way right now? And from everything that we're looking at today, we would definitely know that if one or both new announcements for DCA were to go in the Simba parking lot, that absolutely means that the eastern parking lot has got to get built. So not only is it our clear indicator of when Disneyland Forward will begin, but it will be our clear indicator on what we should anticipate for the level of a Avatar or Coco themed attraction coming into DCA. Because as we've broken down today, expansions always start with parking. Whether these new attractions go inside a DCA or they go over into the Simba parking lot, doesn't matter. Because when they show up, at least we'll get some new vibes. And you know I'm all about the vibes over the rides. Make sure you hit the link below if you want to support Hey Bricky and help me keep showing up 3 times each week and showing up with your beautiful Bricky blouse the next time you go to the theme parks. There's one more thing to consider in all of this. 2028 is when the Olympics show up in Los Angeles. Could a Coco themed boat ride, as well as a Mexican street fair inspired neighborhood around the attraction, could that be the kind of international offering that would bring people back to Disneyland that maybe end up here for the first time ever or for the first time in a long time when they come to Los Angeles to see the Olympics? Coco is scheduled to be that big shiny offering when the world is looking at Southern California. Does that make you think that this might be a big, glamorous, state-of-the-art attraction that might need a lot more space than what's currently available in the footprint of Disney's California Adventure? Food for thought. And even though you maybe don't care about the Olympics coming to LA, could the expedited timeline pay off for fans where we see Disney be motivated to get this construction done in a much faster manner than everything else that we've seen post-pandemic. So with all of these various different elements in play, we will definitely have an idea of what Disneyland and DCA's future looks like when we see what happens over on the eastern end of the Disneyland Resort. No parking garage, we can anticipate that at least Coco, that starts in 2026, will be built inside of DCA. But then that still leaves the question of Avatar, which Disney has not confirmed a location or a start date on. But if they do announce it and we don't see a parking garage announcement, it is safe to say all of that will be inside of DCA. And I think it would limit just what they could do with both of these attractions, forcing them into the small open spaces of Disney's California Adventure. Because don't forget, the idea with both of these projects is to expand the resort. So they don't want to take away an attraction to bring in a new attraction. That just gets you back to even. They want to put these in places where currently Disney guests are not enjoying DCA. So with the timeline of the Olympics, with the anticipation of Disneyland Forward, and with 2 new projects confirmed that will be happening at Disney California Adventure, it'll definitely be exciting times to see what happens and where it happens next. If you want to see where I believe and where the viewers of this channel believe Coco's going inside of DCA, make sure you watch this video right here. Thank you so much for showing up.